Happy Canadian Thanksgiving, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another spectacular episode of the Bush League Huddle Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Fab. I'm joined with Raj and Nak in spirit. He's currently 35,000 feet up in the air on his way back home from Vegas, where he was watching his Steelers beat out the Las Vegas Raiders. So, unfortunately, he won't be here with us physically, but he's listening attentively right now, hoping that we don't kill it on this podcast. That way we invite him back tomorrow.
Miss you, Nak.
Miss you, Nak.
Miss you.
Like always, we're ready to dive into another Overreaction Monday, recap a full slate of games that happened on Sunday. We're going to break down our winners, our losers. We're going to keep you up to date with very important injury updates, highlight the top waiver wire fab targets, suggest some players that it's time to cut the cord from, because you know what? Bye weeks are in full swing right now, and we want to remind our very loyal listeners, which are you guys, the strategy in this season-long game is super important. You got to start thinking a few weeks ahead, and I think right about now is the time you got to put that into perspective. But before we get into the fun stuff, please like, follow, share, subscribe to all of our social medias. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on Twitter. Please download and listen to the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. We post daily, people. We post daily. And our content is good, I promise.
Yes, and ask advice. We're getting a ton of people asking us advice on Twitter, on YouTube. Please ask advice. And as we'll see in our love-hate, a lot of our advice actually ends up working out. So
yeah, listen, last week we were 10-2. This week we're not going to be as fantastic, unfortunately, but still, for the most part, we're definitely batting better than 100. Sorry, better than 50%. So 100%. Ask us all your questions. Ask your sit start questions. Who to pick up, who to drop, even trade questions too. Like we're pretty available for our fans out there. So don't sleep on us, guys. But before we jump into that, before we start, we gotta break down our individual winners and losers this week. There's a lot of stuff right now. There's a lot of interesting things that happened this week. Roger, I'm very excited for the first one that you have on slate right now. So who's your first winner this week?
Yeah, I'm excited for this one too, Fab. This division used to be called the Black and Blue division because it was tough as nails. It was all about running the football. It was all about teams that are in cold weather climates, which they still are. But for me, a big winner is the NFC North. Every team went undefeated this week. Yes, even the Vikings, even though they were on bye. And I think two stats show how amazing this division has been. It's the only division in the NFL where all four teams have a positive point differential, which is huge, which is amazing. Minnesota's at 61, Detroit's at 60, Chicago's at 47, and Green Bay is at 41. Six weeks through the season, that's amazing.
Yeah,
and then the first division since realignment in 2022, where all four teams have at least 4 wins through 6 weeks. That is a sign that all 4 teams could potentially make the playoffs. So, what I love about this division, it's not just through running the football. It's not just through tough defensive physical play. The quarterback play has been absolutely fantastic, and it continues to be really good. And we're seeing a lot of ascension. We'll talk about some other players afterwards, but I think for me, the NFC North has been a huge winner this week and a huge winner this season.
Absolutely. They've been lights out. I mean, and everyone counted out half of that division, quite frankly, before the season even started. No one thought Chicago or Minnesota were going to be where they are.
Totally.
But they've just been wrecking it right now.
Hey,
I know they're all in plus point differential. I believe all 4 of them lead the league in point differential. I think
that's like the top 4. That's like the top 4 in that order.
Which is even more impressive.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few blowouts. Obviously, every team has, I believe, Minnesota blew out the Texans. Detroit obviously blew out the Cowboys. Yeah. Chicago just blew out the Jaguars, and Green Bay blew out.
Say that one more time. Who did Detroit blow out?
How about them Cowboys?
Isn't it? It's Jerry Jones's birthday today, I believe.
It was Jerry Jones's birthday. It was the worst home loss for the Cowboys in, I think, ever. So crazy to see. And
I need the Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld. That's a shame.
Jerry Springfield Seinfeld.
Jerry Seinfeld. That's a shame. That's the same GIF. That's a shame. Very good. Very, very good. All right, so we're gonna move on to my loser of the week. One of my losers, because to follow suit with you, Roger, I also picked a division We're going to talk about the NFC East. Unlike their cousins in the North, the NFC East have they pooped the bed this week. The Giants lost Sunday nighter stinker to the Bengals. Cowboys, like you mentioned, got completely blown out and looked severely outplayed versus Detroit. I would like to mention though that Detroit did lose a potential defensive player of the year
That was
in
brutal,
Hutchinson,
man.
which was a
That
brutal
was
injury. Prayers up for him. Hopefully he
yes.
recovers quickly
Guy's a
and
dog.
yeah, it's great. Washington did put up a solid fight against Baltimore, but ultimately lost versus the better team. And Philly eked out a win versus a messed up Cleveland team, despite that team getting galvanized following head coach Nick Sirianni's new psycho-looking buzz cut.
Are we
Which
thinking American History X vibe,
that
or are we?
you get out of my head, Raj. That is yeah, we're not gonna touch that.
I
It's
mean, some curb stomp in Philly. Like I could see that.
oh
You know what? The
dude,
worst part about that, I don't know if you're going to touch upon it, but a lot of people were on him for bringing his kids in the post game press conference
really?
after. Yeah, well, obviously there was the fact that he was getting booed, and there was a lot of fire Nick Sirianni chants during the
Yeah.
game because they weren't performing well.
Well, he was
And
heckling the fans after.
and he was yes, exactly. He was heckling the fans, and obviously, I think he knew he was going to be asked about it after the game. So a lot of people were like, "Dude, you're bringing out your kids as like kind of the shield. Like, hey,
Like a
your kids are there.
defense mechanism.
No one's gonna ask you tough questions. Like, you're in Philly. Like, you're always going to be asked tough questions. It
Yeah,
doesn't
dude.
matter."
I've seen a lot of celebrity, not celebrity. Sorry, I see a lot of high profile sports individuals bring out their kids during like Steph Curry
Steph
comes to
Curry.
mind. Like he
Yeah,
brought his daughter out during every single postseason press conference. So that
yeah,
I saw it and it didn't really bother me. But now that you connect those dots, that it's kind of it would be a good strategy for him to bring his kid inside
yeah.
in the press conference. That way he doesn't get bombarded with tough questions. But I don't know. But in general, this division though, it's super lackluster. Honestly, it's apart from maybe the Giants, I feel like it's anyone's division, and whoever makes the playoffs in this division is in my opinion, is gonna be one and done. I know right now Washington are ahead right now with they're 4-2 is their
4 and
record,
2. Yeah.
which is super impressive. And quite frankly, I hope they're the ones that make the playoffs out of everyone because it'd just be a nice story. But
Yes.
nobody, I don't know. Like this is supposed to be one of those super tough divisions of the NFL, and quite frankly, the last few years they have not. And
It's an
Philly
overrated division.
yeah,
It
100%.
doesn't merit all the kind of historical credit that we provided. It's like the Cowboys look off, just god awful,
They look so dysfunctional.
so dysfunctional. The overrated roster too. Like it's really
Oh yeah,
it feels top heavy from a maybe 3 to 4 players standpoint, but then from a depth standpoint, it's bad. And maybe the last thing is just look. We're both Giants fans, and I'm clamoring on the they need to tank aspect.
yeah,
But
I
how
agree.
disappointing was it for them to score only 7 points against that absolutely horrendous Bengals defense?
It was really frustrating, especially since Daniel Jones was one of my loves this week, and
Yep.
obviously I took an L on that, and that's fine. I put the money where my mouth is, and I got bit off more than I can chew. But you really see that offense, and I don't want to talk too much about the Giants because obviously this isn't a Giants podcast, but you really see how that offense doesn't have any juice when Neighbors isn't in
Yes.
there, and the defense played well.
Yeah.
Like the defense held, and the Bengals, for all accounts, are a high-powered offense, and they held them to was it 10
Lawrence
points
again.
or
Yeah.
like 14,
Lawrence was
whatever,
amazing
13
again,
points,
man.
whatever it was. Like
Yeah.
it's not as if
17.
sorry, 17 points. They held them to a decent amount of points, and I don't know, like they have. I feel like they're like the Jets of last year. Like they have the defense in place that they can actually play pretty well, but the offense is just sputtering without the right guys in place. And we all know that Daniel Jones isn't him. But
That's a great
anyways,
call.
that's 2 minutes more than we need to talk about the Giants. Let's
Yep.
move on to the next your next winner for this week.
He's a winner. He's also one of my big loves because I have him in four or five leagues. I am heavily invested in my second winner, Joe Mixon. He had 30 points almost 30 points in week 1. Then he got injured. He missed 2 or 3 games. I think it was 2 games because of hip drop tackle. And
Yeah,
then basically scored another 30 points. Was fantastic against the Patriots. Had a 59-yard run. Touched 13 carries, 102 yards, touchdown rushing, touchdown receiving.
beauty.
So got it done on both sides. And I think it was impressive that overall the Texans were able to sustain solid games from Tank Dell. I think Tank Dell scored a touchdown. Stephon Diggs scored a touchdown, who I own as
Yes.
well. Joe Mixon scored 2 touchdowns.
Yes.
Holy cow, this team, the offense is on
They're
fire,
rolling, man.
man.
They're rolling. It's I like this a lot. I like this as a winner a lot. I really like Joe Mixon, and I know that he comes a little bit older than most running backs, but he really came into like he looks like he belongs in that
Yeah.
offense, and they were missing a top end running back to I guess like put that last piece of the puzzle of what Houston Texans could be from an offensive powerhouse, and they're there. And I'm curious to know like how do you view him for the rest of season? Only after seeing 2 games and maybe a quarter of him, even though he put up like 60 points at this point.
Yeah, there's some people who are saying he's a he's a fringe RB1. Like
Who would say that?
I don't remember who that person was, but like if
For
you
all the
look at
listeners,
who's
that was me during our notes right before our recording. I wrote him down as a fringe RB1 rest of season. Roger took exception to that, so he's calling me out on it.
yeah, if you look at the running back PPR ranking so far, Kamara, Henry are 2, Saquon is 3, Kyron is 4. Then you got like Chuba Hubbard is 5th, Jordan Mason who's 7th. To me, it's not fringe. He's if he doesn't miss those 2 or 3 games, whatever it is, he is right up there with the elite running backs right now. And you clearly see the difference with Cam Akers, how bad he looked, Dare
Oh yeah,
Ogunbowale, and then Mixon. Once he comes back, it's just night and day. Like makes a
yeah.
huge difference to that offense.
Yeah, he's a pro straight up, and
Yeah,
not to knock Cam Akers and the rest of the running back room over there, but Joe Mixon is a pro. He's done it for years with the Bengals, and he put up solid numbers year in and year out, no matter what. And it's nice to see that he's really killing it over there. The reason why I said fringe was because you rank the top 10, 11 guys each week, right, on a matchup perspective and all that, and he would be most likely on the lower end of those RB1 scales. It's been 2 games, and I'm not knocking Joe Mixon here. It's just more the fact of that you can't expect a 30-point outing every single week. And there are more, not I want to say sustainable, but there are like, dude, the David Montgomery. You want to talk about an RB1 rest of season? Like
Fab. I feel you just named Josh Jacobs to me. Josh Jacobs to me, like, and I own him in 2 leagues. To me, that's
Josh
like,
Jacobs is an RB2 man the rest of the season. I'm sorry.
yeah.
Apart from his 30 carry,
I'm getting there.
like
I'm
he's
getting there. I'm getting there.
Josh Jacobs is going to go down as one of the larger disappointments this year, in my opinion. Speaking of disappointments, though, I know the Monday Nighter just kicked off. I know you have your hand up, but rest of season, would you rather have Brees Hall or Joe Mixon?
Joe Mixon. It's not even close.
Really?
The
Not
offensive, the
even
offense. It's
close.
because the offensive infrastructure is way more sustainable, I think, to Joe Mixon eating the offense. The funny thing is the Texans' offense line, they're not an amazing run blocking offensive line, but I think the Bobby Slowick factor, Slowick coming from the Shanahan tree. So there's a lot
Right.
of like zone runs, zone cuts, which is perfect type of running back scheme
Mhm.
for Mixon, leads himself to that type of success. And again, when CJ Stroud is there, you got Diggs, you got Dell,
Yeah.
Nico, like you can't stack the box against those guys. It's like
No, you
forget.
can't. That's a
And he's
very
a
good point.
yeah, so yeah, it's easy
Yeah,
win
that's a
for me.
very good point. All right. So that's yeah, I definitely agree with that winner. So my loser, Mr. DJ, you got to give me more, DJ Moore. And the only reason why I say this is because I was
Give
kind of
me more.
give me
No.
more, give me no. So it's a cappella on a Monday. So Caleb threw for 4 TDs. By all accounts, Caleb had a nice game, and he's
Fantastic.
been on the ascension for sure. Allen caught 2 of them. Keenan Allen caught 2 of them. So the demise of Keenan Allen has been greatly exaggerated, ladies and gentlemen. Cole Kmet caught 2 of them. DJ tied for the team in targets for 5, but it would have just been nice for him to also take part in the TV festivities, especially considering he was up against the Jacksonville Jaguars and a decent matchup. So it was one of those things
Did
where
you purposely do that? Did you purposely
100%,
wanted to call them the London Jaguars? Okay.
1,000,000%,
Okay.
and it flew so well. Thank you. It was seamless. It was just one of those. It's just he's been up and down right now, and seeing as Caleb has been rolling a little bit. For me, it was just more of a left a little bit out there too. So I
Yeah.
know that Caleb did. Um, I think he had a walk. I think he had a walk-in touchdown, and Caleb just like underthrew that ball or like just floated it
Yes.
up, and it. I forget if it was interception, but basically
No.
it wasn't complete.
So I
Uh,
think no. What happened was it was a red zone throw. It was for It was supposed to be for his fifth touchdown.
yeah,
Moore caught it. He ran after the catch, and he was knocked down just before he crossed the goal line, and then I think Swift ran it in. So he
so that's what
actually
it was.
was going to get a touchdown, but still, to your point, it's still a disappointing game. Anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I think better days are ahead.
Yeah.
He's still one of the guys I want to own in that offense, but it's just from a matchup perspective, you really thought it was going to be a much more fruitful game for DJ Moore, but that wasn't the case.
Yeah, I think the difference between what we're seeing with Caleb and Fields is that Caleb can go through progressions. He could go first read, second read,
You
throw.
see him go through progressions though too on the field. Like you
Yes, it's
actually see it. It's
yeah, and
nice
he
to
looked
watch.
like last week against the was it against the Panthers? Like he looked off a safety, then he threw to the seam on Moore. There was a beautiful catch. And the difference between him and Fields is Fields will lock into a receiver. Like we're
Yeah,
seeing those issues. He locks in the receiver. So he's gonna go to Moore regardless. I think
yeah.
Caleb is a bit more way more nuanced so far as what we're seeing. So he's gonna go to the second, third read, and that's where Keenan Allen and Cole Kmet were able to benefit this week.
Yeah, there was that one touchdown. I think it was the first one to Cole Kmet where he went through all of his progressions and he hit him right in the
Oh, so nice.
right between the
Yeah, the middle one,
numbers,
eh?
and I was
That was
I was like,
beautiful.
okay, this
Yeah.
that, like he's
Yes.
arrived.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was my
I'm glad
moment
you
where
mentioned that
like
one.
yeah, like he really he's here. Like
Yeah.
it's nice to see. So
Totally.
moving on to your last winner of the week.
Yeah, my last winner or winners are the rookie QBs who had really good statistical weeks in week 6. Obviously, we just spoke about Caleb Williams, 33 points, and he revived Keenan Allen. Drake May, 24.52 points. Wasn't the most clean game, but if you factor in what the Patriots were doing with Jacoby Brissett before
Yeah,
that, he was able to
yeah,
make Demario Douglas and Keyshawn Butte relevant, who I think we'll talk about later on.
100%.
Really solid outing. I was expecting way worse from Maye.
I was not
Bo,
expecting him to throw three touchdowns.
no,
I really
no,
did not, and it's a very I feel much more
100%.
optimistic about Drake May today than I did like last week.
100%. And a lot of people were saying, why start him against the Texans? Why not wait the week after in London against the Jaguars? Well, I thought he performed really well. So, Bo Nix, okay game. 23 points. The rushing upside helps him, but again, it doesn't look great. Jaden, what can we say about Jaden Daniels? Like every week he looks amazing. Really interesting stat. He has the highest QBR in the league when blitzed.
It's ridiculous.
Absolutely nuts for a rookie.
Yeah,
Like
stupid.
makes no sense. And then lastly, so Daniels had 23 points and Spencer Rattler 15 points. I thought solid performance. Fifth
Yeah,
round rookie against a Todd Bowles defense. Todd Bowles typically has a high pressure defense, and I thought he actually performed really well. Some of his teammates were really optimistic after the game, saying like he looks the part. I, I said it on our Twitter account in the summer.
you
If
did.
he gets a chance to play, I just Derek Carr just leaves a lot of meat on the bone. So but in any case, I think the rookie QBs fared really well. If you're in a bind where you need one of those rookie QBs in a 2 QB league, like I'm going to be starting Drake May this week, no problem because I have Dak Prescott out, so I'm not going to have any issues starting him. And I think overall, if you look at how they're doing, Caleb has to be in the convo for offensive rookie of the year. He's looking better and better, more poised, playing much cleaner in the pocket. And lastly, 4 of the 5 rookies finished in the top 10 of scoring, obviously before Monday Night Football, and they all outscored our buddy Dak Prescott. So really strong week for all the rookie QBs.
It's nice to see. It really is. All 5 of them put up solid fantasy points. What I like the most actually is that they all had they all have a relatively high rushing upside, which is super
Yes.
impressive. Like they all, like I think it was just Jaden Daniels that rushed for 22 yards. That was the lowest, right? Like Bo Nix, I think you're gonna have to get a lot of rushing upside out of him. Drake May was hauling the ball too. Caleb, we mentioned it a few times. I don't want to speak too much of it at length, but Caleb saw a lot of those that backyard football style
Yep.
of play. Like, he really excels in those broken down plays, and
Yep.
you saw it. You saw it this weekend too. So no, I don't disagree. I think it was a really good outing, a really good showing from the rookie QBs. What I have as my final loser of the week, and I'm looking forward to finishing this off because I want to get on to not so some more interesting stuff. It's always talking about losers. You know what I mean? So we got some dysfunctional organizations that are just going to continue to dysfunction. Dallas, Tennessee, Cleveland, Vegas, Jacksonville. They all lost this week. All offense looked anorexic. Apart from Dax and the CDs of the world, it's a dumpster fire. Like, it's hard to trust any one of these offense again, apart from Dak and CD. And you can throw in Brock Bowers in there, who is actually potentially going to be tight end one in the year, and Pollard as well. But just goes to show you that from a real football perspective, when the franchises are run well from the top, it really translates on the field. And these are just some franchises that have made some really interesting moves in the last few years, and you can just tell how they haven't necessarily translated to proper winning football. And I don't know. I just was like these 5 teams here. Honestly, you can even throw in the Giants if you want. They just left a lot to.
You should. You really
Yeah,
should.
I probably should. And looking back, I was like, yeah, the Giants fit perfectly in here.
But Fab, what do you think is the common denominator of all this dysfunction from all 5, 6 of them?
I mean, it's very easy for me to say that the owners are inept, right? Like, at the very top of the food chain, it's the owners that are inept in that sense.
You're not wrong. That's not what I was thinking. But the inept ownership, especially Tennessee, it's gone downhill since the AJ Brown trade. But I was going to say QB play.
Oh my God, that team was so well, like that when they had AJ Brown, and they had obviously when they had the Derrick Henry and even Tannehill, like that team was operating pretty well.
Yeah,
despite not having like super big names at a quarterback, they were coached well. They were performed. They were hard to play against.
Yes.
Dallas, every year they make the playoffs, right? I get it, but then they're usually one and done, if that. Cleveland, nothing more to say.
It's the QB play for all of them right now. Even Dallas, like
Vegas, apart from their quarterback, that team has a nice offense to go around the quarterback that can actually do well. They can't get it done. Jacksonville, same thing. Like I don't know what's going on with Trevor Lawrence. I don't know. Like we keep on talking about meat on the bone. Maybe this is just how much meat's on the bone at this point. It's hard to trust too much of any of those guys and those offenses, apart from the big marquee stars that we already just mentioned, right? So, and I feel like there is a common theme, and I feel like the theme has to do with the dysfunction, the dysfunctional nature of those organizations that make a lot of those decisions.
Yep.
With that being said, we're going to move on to some of the major injuries that took place in Week 6 that are of extreme note. We sort of broke it down actually by injury type this time around, because we seem to find a lot of guys grouped into one or two different types of injuries. So from a concussion standpoint, Marvin Harrison Jr., I don't know about you guys, but he put up a bunch of zeros for me, unfortunately. He did get concussed early on in the game and never came back, so we wish him the best. Chris Olave as well. Devon Achane today was practicing with a red jersey, a non-contact jersey, so keep an eye out on specifically Devon Achane on how that's going to conclude for the rest of the week. But I think Chris Olave is most likely going to miss this week, and most likely Marvin Harrison Jr. as well.
That's a Thursday night game. The Saints, yeah.
Yes, Thursday night games the Saints, so you can practically, you can pencil them out to not play that game for sure. Over the weekend, we saw some news about Nico Collins. He is on IR. Have a lot of Nico shares. This hurts. He's going to be out for the next, I think, 4 to 5 weeks. At minimum. Tajay Spears also picked up a hamstring injury, so keep an eye out for that. So if you're a Pollard owner, that's good news. Shoulder injuries, we got Devontavian Wicks, so he's going to be week to week. So I think you might be able to. Honestly, we didn't add him to cut the cord by this point. Like, you might have had a conversation about if
I thought about it.
Like, now that I'm speaking out loud here and going over this, is like Mac is listening to this podcast right now, smiling from ear to ear. Yeah. So
somehow he's keying in on it. He's probably tapped into a wire or something.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Vegas
he's
style.
On the shared document. So he's he picked up a shoulder injury. He's gonna be week to week. But even that, Romeo Doubs came back. and really performed a lot better and a lot quicker than I thought he would, following the whole practice issue and all that. So
Socialist wide receiver core, man. That's like
100%.
aside from Reed,
Yeah, because
avoid.
even Christian Watson had a game, he caught a touchdown, like his typical 40-yard
He's gonna get
touchdown
injured.
grab.
We don't wish injuries on anyone, but this guy staying healthy is not a
Is
foregone
being held
conclusion.
together by dental floss. We have Travis Etienne, who picked up a shoulder injury very early on in the game and didn't return. So just monitor his progress for the rest of the week. We got some other guys to take note of. Ramondre Stevenson missed this week's game with a calf injury. Anthony Richardson seems to be set to return for week 7, according to head coach, I believe it's Steve Steichen.
Shane.
Steichen, excuse me. So he already came out during a press conference and said, barring any setbacks, Anthony Richardson is expected to start. Derek Carr, as you all know, is on, I believe he's on IR. It's hard to keep track, so many IRs.
Derek Carr is not on. I don't think Derek Carr is on IR.
So he's
I
on a
think
week-to-week.
It's a multi-week injury for now.
Okay. Michael Pittman was supposed to be on IR, but then he wasn't, and then he played, and then he scored a TD, and then he said he's still injured. So we're not really sure what the situation is with Michael Pittman.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out, because apparently after the game he said he is still injured. So
yeah, I just want to go back quickly to Anthony Richardson.
Yes.
Man, if he stinks the bed there, it's gonna, like, already this is causing a big quarterback controversy. If he stinks the bed, it's going to get really awkward in that locker room, because it's very clear that the team just looks way better with Joey Flacco.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's not even a question.
No, Anthony Richardson is a very, very good athlete.
He's
I
raw.
don't think he's a good quarterback.
He's
right
raw.
now.
He's extremely
He's
raw.
still very raw. So I agree with you. Well, listen, it's not my decision to make. But sticking on with the Colts, Jonathan Taylor was out for another week. I think he might be back this week, but just keep an eye on that. Brian Robinson Jr., we mentioned last week that he might not play. He did not play. And finally, Jordan Mason picked up an injury during the Thursday night contest last week. Isaac Guerendo popped up for 99 yards on 10 carries. I don't think that Jordan Mason injury is a lengthy one, but obviously we're going to be talking about Guerendo during our Fab and Waiver Wire, which we're going to jump into right now after that lengthy list of injuries. My goodness, it's like
I thought you were
week
going to
2
cut to a
again.
break. Like,
Yeah.
We don't have
here's a word from our
sponsors.
sponsor.
What? We got a sponsor?
We have a sponsor?
Would have been great to know before.
No, we don't have a sponsor. Here's some Fab and Waiver Wire players that you should definitely keep an eye on right now. So obviously, Bo Nix right now is 11% owned after that 24-point fantasy production week. He looked really good on the final drive. He ran for 61 yards. He's a must own and almost a must start in pretty much all formats. He's great value in Superflex and 2 QB leagues. Roger, I'm just going to list them all off. I want you to tell me which ones are the guys you were going to really go for.
Mm-hmm.
We said QB Drake Maye. Right now, he's 6% owned, another 25 fantasy points. He made Keyshawn Booth and Demario Douglas relevant, instantly boost the Pats pass catchers, which is not a phrase I thought I would be saying today. Running back Sean Tucker for the Bucks, 1% owned, went off, 14 carries, 136 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 receptions, 56 yards, another touchdown. Him and Bucky Irving actually split carries.
Yeah.
Although Bucky Irving had a very good day. He had 14 carries, 81 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 receptions for 21 yards. Sean Tucker actually outplayed him.
Yeah.
And I don't think he was a household name at all before the week started.
Yeah, I want to touch on the QBs in a bit, but just while you're on Sean Tucker, this one is a difficult one in terms of how much fab to spend on Sean Tucker, because Todd Bowles basically said that because of how well he played, it cuts into the 3-headed monster with Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker. These are the type of situations where it looks really nice to see the 34.2 points, but I believe a lot of his yardage came in garbage time at the tail end of the game. And I don't think the Rachaad White injury is long-term, and Bucky Irving still looks very good. To me, this is a situation to avoid. I wouldn't blow a lot of fab on Sean Tucker. As good of a prospect as I heard he was at Syracuse, this is not a situation where you want to blow a lot of fab on, because a 3-headed monster at running back is more stress than anyone needs on their roster, in my opinion.
If you're gonna take Bucks head coach Todd Bowles, but for his word on his comments, I agree with you
I don't know what
100%.
his coach speak rating is,
Oh,
but
neither do I. I was gonna ask if we had that information, but
no, we don't. No.
tune into next episode.
Defensive coaches, I feel like defensive coaches have a higher coach speak rating though than offensive
Yeah, I feel
ones.
like they speak in a more honest pretext.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're very true. It's very the garbage time thing is true. Man, that Bucks game was super fun to watch, though. My God, I still think Bucky Irving is definitely the guy to own in this offense, and hopefully you have him by now. But we can talk about how much fab to spend, if any. But I wouldn't be, to be honest, I might even avoid this altogether. I know this sounds crazy to say, but like if I have a roster spot to burn, there's other guys on there that I'd rather have that might have more sustainability for the rest of the season. If you are desperate, then 100%. I know it sounds crazy to say after you put up 34 points, but this could be another Juwan Jennings type of scenario, right? Where you're going to blow a
Yeah.
lot of fab on this guy.
Exactly.
Because reality,
It's
when
a
Rashad White
fantastic
comes back,
example.
yeah, when Rashad White comes back, he's going to have a role, albeit much less than what it was before, because Irving, I think we can all agree, has taken over the lead role in that backfield. So then what does that lead for Sean Tucker? Like a few carries a game?
Another thing with
Realistically?
sorry to cut you off. Another thing with defensive coaches is they rarely trust rookies unless they really have to. And in this case, he really had to because Rashad White was out.
He's already trusting one rookie. So
yeah, good point. Exactly.
Yep. So that's our take for Sean Tucker. Tyler Algier, 30% owned, 19.8 fantasy points. Tyler Algier should be 100% owned. Him and Bijan Robinson are pretty much in an even timeshare in that backfield. It's nice to see Bijan get one of those get right games, because he did ball out. What I think he had with 3 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns.
Yeah, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
15 carries, 19 routes, 4 targets, 105 total yards. Yeah, definitely fantastic game. But Tyler Algier isn't going anywhere. So if you have space on your roster and you need a flex play, he should be rostered 100%. The role is there. He doesn't go away. I think this is I think this might be the Detroit backfield light version.
Yes, that's a great call out.
Because year in, year out, we always talk about like Bijan Robinson and the prior before that. Like Tyler Algier he's been a staple in that offense. So you should be spending like a good 5 to 10% of your fab on this guy.
Yeah, the he has a 38% carry rate on the season. So like call it 40%. And the Falcons are running the ball quite a bit. So he's gonna get the 10 to 14 carries on a weekly basis, and he's efficient enough of a runner to make use of that. So like if he's available, 30% of leagues is madness that he's still available. But to me, this is an easy 30% bid for Algier if somehow he's still available.
30% bid.
100%. Especially if you have, you know what? If you have Bijan, that's interesting actually. If you have Bijan, should you even bother bidding on him? Yes, because if Bijan gets injured, Algier is a league winner.
We use that term way too loosely on this podcast.
So does Salvetri, and so do all the other analysts. But they don't get as much issues as we do.
For it.
Yeah, clap back.
Shout out to Salvetri.
Yes.
He's the paisan of the podcast.
Paisan of the podcast. But if you're not a Bijan owner, I think it's very well worth it to own the handcuff. Like 30% is like we were saying 40-50% for Kareem Hunt. Fab.
Yeah. Yeah, the difference is yes, but the difference is that this one here comes with an asterisk, and I don't disagree with what you're saying. It's and I don't think Bijan has much of an injury history.
Then why aren't they giving him the ball more? I think they're worried. I think they're concerned about his usage because otherwise you spend that much draft capital on a running back. There's no reason why you wouldn't want to give him the rock more than what they're doing now.
I think they just like Algier. I think it just comes down to them having two, like they want to use 2 really good running backs, and that whether they use the draft capital on Bijan or not, they like what they have at Algier. I don't. It's that simple for me, honestly. I don't see it being more complicated. But I can understand your argument for 30%. At this point, I don't
What
know
would
if
you
I'll
put?
put
What
that
would you
much.
put? What would you put?
I would put like 15 to 20%.
You think that's getting it done if he's available after the game he just
It
had?
also depends on my roster construction as well. If I'm desperate for a running back, yes, I am putting 30%, no problem. If I'm not, and it's more of a depth play for me, then I think I'll be quit. I'll put more of the 15 to 20% in that sense. And like if I'm adding him as my fourth running back on my team and I have needs elsewhere, it also depends on where your other needs might be. Like there's been a lot of wide receiver injuries lately, so you might not be able to spend that much money. But I'm not disagreeing with your take though.
It's
Just
interesting.
want to be clear on that. It's just it's
His fantasy points per game 2.1, 7.5, 3.2, 10, 5.5, 19.8. Thought it was better than
30%'s a
that.
lot. 30%'s a lot. If
Yeah.
Knack was here, he's like, no, Rod, you're crazy. But I am curious to know how much you would put for Isaac Guerendo, 4% owned. He put up 12 points. Obviously, depends on Jordan Mason's status, but he could be an RB1 as well. I think that's more of a. I think that's more of a 30%. Like you're gonna have to keep your eye on Jordan Mason for the rest of the week, obviously in his statistics. But I don't know. That's another
This is
thing
as
too. Where
much
like
as you can. This is so as
I
much as you
suppose,
can. That
yeah,
doesn't help anyone. Obviously, like now that I think about it, the 25-30% for Guerendo makes sense. Caveat: if you are a CMC and Jordan Mason owner,
100%.
like you don't have any other recourse. Like
No,
Stamati's AKA, like I think Stamati's actually owned them, and then I was like, dude, you don't need the handcuff to the handcuff.
well, I think he does.
Ah, he does. Okay,
I know. I
good.
think he does right now. Like,
Yeah. You like the thing is, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If Mason ends up playing, well, you just blew that 30% or whatever it is. But you're gonna have a hard time if you lose another running back where you drafted it CMC super high. Somehow you're able
no,
to
for
look
sure.
into Mason, and then you're able to get Guerendo.
Listen, apart from this game though, Guerendo hasn't exactly been super efficient either running the
No,
rock. Like if you look at his other games too, where he did have like a few more than 5 or 6 carries, he wasn't as efficient as he won this game where he had 10 carries for 99 yards. There's also that to take consideration as well. He might not be that efficient as a runner, but if you're needy, I can understand you spending 20%, 30, 25% of your fab on him. But this also might just be a 1 week thing as well. So just proceed with caution in that sense, because I don't believe Jordan Mason's injury was that serious. He might be gone for a week or two. Maybe you want to put that fab elsewhere, like on the other guys we're about to mention. Gabe Davis, wide receiver for Jacksonville, 17% owned. He put up 21.5 fantasy points this week, 2 touchdowns, but I don't think that's that sustainable. The next guy, though, Pop Douglas, 7% owned, wide receiver for the New England Patriots, 21.2 fantasy points, 3 of 4 games with 9 targets per game. This guy I'm very interested in.
yeah,
Very interested in. And if you listen to our earlier episodes, where I think where we had our question and we had a question and answer episode where we were fielding some questions from some of our listeners. I believe it was episode 10, and someone asked us about Pop
nudes. What was
Wilson.
that guy? Nudes. That was that guy, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't his yeah, something nudes?
No. This was I think it was from the Bush League. I
Oh,
think it was Nick that asked us about Pop Douglas, and I was like,
yes,
who?
yes, yes.
Who's Pop Douglas?
We
Well,
didn't even answer it seriously.
we didn't even answer that, and I apologize. I'll take full responsibility on that because 3 of the last 4 games with 9 targets per game. And he balled out last week, and he could be Drake May's target for the rest of the year, of his favorite target for the rest of the year. Definitely someone I'll be spending about a good 15 to 20% of my fab on, more on the 20% side too,
Yeah,
especially with all the wide receiver injuries that have been happening lately. He's definitely someone that is very interesting to me. And it looks like, and again, it seems as if Drake can actually sustain. Garrett Wilson just scored a touchdown. It seems as if Drake can actually sustain an offense. So that's going to be it's exactly good. It's exactly what you're going to want to see from Pop Douglas. So I'm spending a little bit more on him than I would be on other players.
he's the WR30 since week 3.
Yeah, it's solid.
Very solid,
It's
and
solid.
he just scored his first touchdown of the year this week against Houston. So, can we go back to Drake May and the QBs actually quickly, Fab?
Yep.
Um, Nix and May are very good options for the bye weeks coming up. So Bears and Cowboys, Caleb and Dak are out. I think Maye is in a great spot against the Jaguars, and I believe his bye doesn't come until week 12. So, like this is like, AOC was going for like 3 to 5%, and if you look at how the top rookie quarterbacks are performing now, and Drake Maye was a guy who was considered to have a lot of talent
Yeah,
coming out, and a lot of analysts were very high on him. I think the 10 to 15% range for Maye in a 2 QB league is
it's
quite
too
fair.
low.
And you think
I
it's
think it
too
might
low?
be 10 to 15%. It might be too low if he's going to be starting for the rest of the season and airing it out like it is. Plus, he has the rushing upside. If he puts up 30 to 40 yards rushing per week, that's already a 3 to 4 point floor that you cannot discount. So automatically, it does make a difference for whether you're looking at guys that won't necessarily rush, and he doesn't open up. It does open up plays, so it could be much more interesting. And if you're QB needy in a 2 quarterback league like ours, I would spend 20% on Drake May. And I know people are going to come at me in the comments, hopefully, because that just means people are listening. But at the same time, that I got that you if he throws it and he
You're not
rushes
wrong.
and he creates plays, like
You're
let's
not
see,
wrong because Bo Nix is the QB 14 right now.
Also,
So
just to add to that, it's not as if New England are going to be playing with the lead every single week. So he's going to be throwing a ton.
yeah, my only slight pushback on that, and I mean when we're talking about 10 to 15, 20%, it's it's small
Yeah,
percentage points.
it's a microcosm. Yeah.
Um, Knicks probably goes for the same, maybe a little bit more because I feel like he has a bit more talent on that team. I think he's a better runner as well. The offense, I give him a bit. I give him a bit of a kick because of the Sean Payton factor as well. It's an
Yeah,
offense that's tailored to him. Like
I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
it's more yard after catch.
The talent I would argue with. I don't see the Denver offense being any more talented than the New England
I'm
offense,
just
quite
saying
frankly.
I'm just saying for Cortland Sutton, but yeah, it's you're splitting hairs there. But I
Yeah.
think overall, I think you could group Knicks and May, and if somehow in Superflex 2 QB they're still available, 10, yeah, like 15-20% easily. Like
Dude, you
Andy
can do
Dalton,
worse, right?
damn Andy Dalton went for I had put it 22% on him. I think Stamati's got him for like 25%. And
Did you say that Bo Nix is QB 14 on the year?
he's QB 14 on the year in
Yeah,
so
and
far.
Patrick Mahomes is QB 16 on the year, correct?
Fantasy is stupid.
Right? Thank you.
Fantasy
So
is
just
so
to put things
stupid.
into perspective, ladies and gentlemen, about what we're talking about.
Deshaun
Raj, we have
Watson, mind you, with a bye, but Deshaun Watson is still QB
anyways, we're gonna get to
22.
Deshaun Watson in a quick second, though, unfortunately. He does a lot of things in a quick second. We have a few more wide receivers.
I saw that coming.
We have a few more wide receivers. So we have Juju Smith-Schuster, 32% owned. He had 20 points a week 5. Him too. If you have the space, snag him. Put about 5 to 10% because that might be a little bit more of an. You would put more than 10% on Juju Smith-Schuster?
He's the WR1 there.
Okay.
Like he's a WR1 there.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. And this guy actually, which you Bub Means. That's right. Bub Means, the wide receiver for the New Orleans
Deep
Saints.
ass cut.
Very deep cut. So 5 receptions, 45 yards, 1 touchdown this week. So Olave has a concussion. Shaheed is also apparently injured. He was a non-participant on Monday's practice. Spencer Rattler did throw to him, and he seems to be forming some sort of a connection with him. And the game is Thursday. So if you are wide receiver needy, this could be a very interesting grab for you for a plug and play and a start on Thursday night. Keep an eye out for Bub Means, ladies and gentlemen, because the wide receiver room for the New Orleans Saints seems to be slightly depleted right now. It's hard for me to judge how much to put from a fab perspective. Again, it depends on what your needs are, but not a lot of right now. He's 0% owned. Like that's probably not true. He's probably is owned by like maybe a handful of teams. And when I say a handful, I mean like 4.
His parents own him in fantasy.
Most likely, yeah. Someone drafted him because they like his name Bub Means. But right now he is not owned anywhere. So just keep an eye out for him, and please keep your ear to the ground on any more injury updates for the New Orleans Saints pass catchers, because this would mean that Mr. Bub Means, that's not even a pun. That just happened by accident. He's going to be thrown into a more of a prominent role in that offense.
I listened to nothing of what you said. I'm just trying to understand why his nickname is Bub. I'm sorry.
That's his name. It's not a
No, it's
nickname.
not. It's Gerard. Gerard
Is it
Bub
Gerard?
Means. Come on. You really thought
That's
his
how
name
it
was
is on.
Bub?
That's how it is on Yahoo. It's Bub Means. I know his name was Gerard. Apologize, Gerard. Gerard, if you're
Do
listening.
you think Juju Smith Schuster's real name is Juju? Because it
No,
says
that I
Juju
know,
on
but it's still
Yahoo.
on
On Yahoo.
Yahoo. It's like Yahoo. I go by,
Yahoo's official.
yeah, it's official for me. Let's jump into ahead of the curve. Keep it rolling over here. So these are some guys that you need to keep an eye out for. Maybe not necessarily this week, but going forward, because they could turn into some fantasy, potentially productive fantasy players on your team. So QB for the Cleveland Browns, Jameis Winston. So Deshaun has been obviously awful. Jameis Winston is not owned at all. But head coach Kevin Stefanski was already asked if Deshaun Watson is the starter. So the convo regarding Deshaun has already begun, whether he will be the starter or not. Jameis Winston, if he does start, he's an automatic QB2. The guy slings it and he throws. And I would also go as far as to upgrade the rest of the offense as well, because
And opposing defense, too.
yeah, 100% opposing defense too. No risk it, no biscuit. Like he threw the ball more. He led. I think he led the league in touchdowns and interceptions that
30
one
for
year.
30, 30.
30-30. Like, it's ridiculous. You got to give the guy props though. Like, at least
Apparently he was blind. Apparently he needed LASIK surgery after that season.
dude, Jameis Winston is the most interesting character in the NFL, and it's not even close. Like, his sound bites are just fantastic. And he's not even a bad guy. Like, he shows up to people's weddings randomly. Anyways,
Look up his FSU stuff. He's not the best guy.
well, speaking from an NFL perspective, Gardner Minshew, who is 3% owned. Why can't the Cleveland not have any quarterback controversies, like, outside of
just they had it last? They had their QB of the future last year.
Yeah. Quarterback Gardner Minshew, 3% owned. AOC is equally awful. They could be just going back and forth between quarterbacks at this point, but just keep an eye on that.
QB, if you have space, just own both. Like, would you just own both if you have space? Like, somehow, if you,
I'd rather have a running back room on my roster than a quarterback room. I don't know. Call me crazy.
Yeah.
It's rough out there, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, it's rough out there. Russell Wilson. So Fields looks like to be a week-to-week starter. Non-inspiring performance versus the Raiders, even though they got it done. Russell Wilson is not yet 100% healthy. So it's something to keep an eye on as well.
No, he is. He was back. He was the backup. He's back? Yeah, he's the backup.
I know he was the backup, but like, is he?
Yeah, it sounds like he's ready to go. Like,
okay,
yeah. Like, well, I thought Fields. I think he had 2 rushing touchdowns. He had a good fantasy game, but locked into the receivers. Like, the passing game with him, I just feel it's deteriorating. Whereas it looked really solid in the early going.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you on that, but it hasn't been very inspiring either as of late. But if they're winning with him, you know, it's unless they put a string of losses together, and then their playoff hopes go into doubt. I think Fields will be the guy indefinitely. But again, something to keep an eye on for sure. Because, you know, Knack always says it, that Tomlin mentions it quite often, that you never, like, he's one of those guys that you don't lose your starting spot because of injury. So
it's a weird situation. It's really weird 100%. Because Tomlin doesn't want to admit him as the full-time starter. It feels like they're just waiting for Fields to mess up like horrendously, and then they go on like a 2-3 week losing streak. So we'll see.
That's kind of the same sentiment I'm getting to be honest with you. So it's anyways. This was an interesting one, and I put this in right before the podcast started because I thought I was surprised at how low the ownership is. QB for the Miami Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa. He's 44% owned right now. He's still on IR. Miami are coming off a bye, and he will still miss the next few weeks at least, I think. But in a two QB league and Superflex league, if he was like anger dropped, pick him up because head coach McDaniels did say he will play again in 2024. So if you have some space on your roster for him, he'll be playing at some point this year, and it might be sooner than people realize. Unfortunately, and I only say unfortunately because from a medical standpoint, I don't think he should play for the rest of the year and even contemplate retiring. But that's a different conversation. So if if he's on your free agents, if you're on your waivers, think about picking him up and stashing him until he plays again, especially if you're in a super flex and 2 QB league, without a doubt.
Yep.
The next guy, Kimani Vidal, 11% owned, 13. He's a running back for the Los Angeles Chargers. 13 fantasy points this week. He's the clear backup to J.K. Dobbins, and obviously would be the starter if injury-prone Dobbins misses time. My only thing I want to mention is that of those 13 points, I think 10 came off one play.
Yep.
Off that 40-yard touchdown grab,
Very
which was
nice.
beautiful. Don't get me
Very,
wrong, but
very nice play.
they have been singing his praises quite a bit at camp and during practices. He's definitely a guy to watch, to keep an eye out. So he fits perfectly within ahead of the curve, no doubt. And Roman Wilson, wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, 0% owned. The Steelers are obviously struggling right now, and I believe he got the start last week.
He was active. He was active yesterday. No targets, but he was active. And that wide receiver corps is horrendous. And George Pickens has been declining for the past 3-4 weeks. So could be interesting play.
100%. Final segment of the episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for sticking with us for so long. We got one last one to go. Cut the cord. Deshaun Watson. If you have 4 QBs or 2 QBs, you have San Francisco, and all buys are done. Just if you don't have to start him, don't cut the cord before he cuts the towel. Just get rid of him. I think it's time that we can move on from Deshaun Watson, unless you are extremely, extremely, extremely needy in superflex leagues, in 2 QB leagues. Chances are he might be your 4th quarterback on there, so I think it's ready to move on from there. Tajee Spears as well, running back for the Tennessee Titans. Muddle backfield when he does come back. It seems to be like it's Tony Pollar's backfield right now. Running back Trey Sermon. Jonathan Taylor is expected to be back fairly soon, and Sermon is quite inefficient. So you can definitely leave him over to waivers. Wide receivers, the Titans pass catchers. Both of them, Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. I think Calvin Ridley was on this segment a few weeks ago, but now DeAndre Hopkins seems to be making a appearance as well, which is unfortunate because he's fan of the podcast. Probably not, but still, DeAndre Hopkins is one of those guys that we definitely root for. But unfortunately, you can't really trust him right now. So if you need space on your roster, especially with buys coming around and all that, you need to pick up an actual guy that could start. For example, a Pop Douglas or a Juju Smith-Schuster. DeAndre Hopkins might be the guy that has to be dropped.
Yeah, and maybe just to touch upon this, even if Mason Rudolph comes in, I don't really have a ton of confidence in this pass catching room. It's been really, really disastrous. And I thought the pass protection would be better. I thought Brian Callahan with his dad coming in would help the pass protection. Obviously, he was also the OC in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow, and we just haven't seen any improvement on that front.
No, it's really unfortunate. I had high hopes for this offense, and with Will Levis. Yeah. I really thought that there was going to be a noticeable improvement of his passing game, and I thought the fact that he had 2 extremely viable wide receiver ones, it was going to definitely improve that game, but I guess that wasn't the case.
Yep.
Lastly, we have. Actually, no, sorry. Second to lastly, we have wide receiver Quentin Johnson. Chargers wide receivers are just not getting targeted right now. LA has turned into a running team, something that we were all concerned about prior to the season beginning. Quentin Johnson did have that one game where he went off, but it's been a few weeks since then where he's just putting up some duds. So I think you're ready to move on from there. Wide receiver Trey Tucker as well. I think he was. There was a period where, this is a wide receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders. There was a period of time where he was being picked up and stashed and even putting up some decent performances. But unfortunately, you can't really trust any Raider pass catcher right now, not named Brock Bowers. So you're better off just looking elsewhere and trying to find some guys that I can pop, and Trey Tucker, unfortunately, in that offense will not. But ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up our Sunday recap. I don't know if you guys have any Monday miracles that you need right now, but right now I got Breece Hall that needs to outscore Garrett Wilson by about 10 fantasy points. So Hopefully, your Monday Nighters are doing better than mine. Thank you very much for the winners and losers and listening to our whole waiver wire segment. Once again, please be sure to follow us on all social medias, as well as rate, like, and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. Again, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, anywhere where you can type in the words Bush League Huddle Podcast, you'll find it. So please interact, engage, ask us some questions. We'll be sure to answer them. And we'll see you next time. So, Roger, without further ado, please cue the music. That's how you do an ending, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for listening. Murdered it. Looks like Guido's going to murder me right now. Fantastic. Garrett, like, he hasn't come to, I don't understand.
Josh Allen not looking good again.
Remember how to throw?
Josh Allen not looking good again.
No, he's going to go 3 for 3 on the duds list. I ain't complaining.
Oh, and James Cook didn't start.
No, he did not start.
Oh man,
maybe we should have mentioned that at the beginning of the episode.
I dodged a bullet there.
Whoopsie. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
See you tomorrow.
Peace out.